post Curry ownership group going to look like? It's one thing when you have the generation's greatest player. You know, I think that's why Larry Bear and I know Peter was kind of on the way out the door at the time, but they're
Peter
looked
McGowan.
at a certain way because in the post Bonds era was when they had their most success.
No, you're right. And look, I appreciate an owner who talks win or lose. Like, not one of these owners who ducks and shies away from everything when he's losing. Joe Lickett's talking, and they didn't make the playoffs, and I respect that aspect of it. My thing is with the players, whether it's Steph or Dre, you know, you're talking about trades that the team could have been making or what they were making. I just thought, whoa, that's a lot there. That's a lot. And now, if you're a teammate of his, you got to be thinking, damn, I was just with him in Summer League. What is my role on this basketball team? Training camp's going to be opening up in a couple months here. We're going to get through August. We're going to get through September, and boom, we're going to be practicing at Chase Center. That's going to happen in a heartbeat here. That's coming around the corner in a quick second. So that's a lot. It's a lot. That's where I'm coming from. And I wonder where Warrior fans are coming from when it comes to that. And we don't care about Draymond podcasting or whatnot because it provides content for us. But just when you start talking about trades, not once, but twice. You can talk about multiple trades. It's a lot there. All right, let's get to our boy Dave Flemming. He's on the hold. He's been waiting patiently here. And, you know, I don't know how much patience he has right now after the way the Giants have opened up the second half of the season. 2-5, losing the series in Colorado. And, of course, the L.A. Dodgers losing 3-4. Dave Flemming joins us here on the River Islands Guest Line. Flem, good morning to you, man. Oh, I was thinking about you because if this team does end up selling, I'm thinking, boy, Flem, over the next 2 months, he's got his work cut out for him. What kind of material he's going to have? Because it could get ugly here. But Flem, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I felt so disappointed watching the Giants the last 7 games. It just felt like they were lifeless. It felt like there was no urgency. And I don't know where we go from here, but, boy, 2-5, to open up the post-All-Star break, just very, very disappointing. I guess at the top of the list is the lineup because they're just not hitting, Flem.
Yeah, I think it's I understand why you feel that way. It's fair to it was a disappointing week, no doubt about that. So I don't think anybody inside that clubhouse even would blame you for feeling the way you feel. That was about as tough a week as you could ever imagine. Yesterday was, you know, to sort of cap it all. I mean, that was a chance to at least get out of there feeling like, okay, we can stabilize and we're coming home and we got a part of the schedule where you can make up some ground and get out to a lead and you got Kershaw on the ropes, and to not be able to just either, you know, pile on a little more against him or pull off that come from behind win. Either way, I thought of all of them, yesterday was the toughest one of all.
Yeah, you know, we can have a bigger philosophical question about Logan Webb. I know he cares. I don't think he's been his best, especially lately, and he admitted as such. He was very candid about it. I'm just looking at the pitching as a whole. Pitching was part of the dynasty. Pitching was the thing that I felt, you know, in part, you know, helped Bonds not get a championship throughout that run. And it did spurn them on one of the greatest runs, even going back through New York, that this team has ever seen. This year's pitching and how they pieced it together, I feel like we're going to have a long conversation for many years to come, whether it's the Jordan Hicks or asking Harrison to do so much and Snell, whatever happened there, and then waiting on Robbie Ray. Like, it feels like too little too late, and the starting pitching has done them in this year.
I think that's right. I do. I think that ultimately the pitching has been the biggest reason why the Giants have underachieved this year. And it's hard to put your finger on, okay, was that just bad planning? Was it unrealistic to sign Snell that late and expect that he could contribute for the first? Was it unrealistic to think, you know, Alex Cobb was talking a big game in spring training about he was going to be ready to go in mid-April, and it's July 26th. He hasn't pitched yet. Robbie Ray, I think, was a whole different thing. I think the Giants made a really good trade in acquiring Robbie Ray. Like, that was a brilliant move, I think. So that's kind of in a different category for me. But yeah, I think it's very fair to say in this ballpark, the identity of this franchise, I don't know if it needs to always be pitching, because he has pretty dang good lineups with Kent and Burks and Bonds and Richie and those guys.
David Bell that 1 year, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like you can't put together a powerhouse lineup here, but when you play in this ballpark, I think pitching is always going to have to be sort of the underpinning of your best teams. And it just hasn't been good enough this year. It hasn't. That's just a fact. Like the 24th in team ERA or something like that. I mean, that's not good enough. So some of that is definitely just bad luck and injury luck, and it got snowballed on them. But that's not all of it.
You know, Flem, I've always thought, and Shasky and I have had this conversation over the last couple of years, and we know about the ballpark. And, you know, if there's a failure to get a power hitter like a Judge or a Harper or a Stanton or an Ohtani, I always thought this ballpark could really show off athleticism and speed. And if you bought into that philosophy of like, hey, let's go first to third, let's get guys who could turn a double into a triple or a single into a double, I always thought maybe that's the way to go in this ballpark and maybe complement that speed with the power hitter or two. The lack of athleticism. Now, we're seeing it from Fitzgerald. He's showing some athleticism. Chapman's got some sneaky speed on the base pass. But it just felt, I don't know if they tried to ignore it because they did bring in Jung-Hoo Lee. But the lack of athleticism with this lineup is alarming, Flem.
Yeah, I think you sort of answered the way I would. Look, Jung-Hoo Lee should have been a big part of that, and will be going forward. And that was a tough blow. That maybe at the time we thought, well, okay, Ramos has come up and done well, and that's been a big birthright, and maybe that's kind of made us forget what a big part of this team Lee was supposed to be and can still be. Tyro just has not had a good year, and I love Tyro Estrada. He's one of the toughest I've ever been around. He just wants to play hurt. There's so many admirable things about him, but last year he stole 24 bases or whatever. I think he's got one this year. So his game has just totally hit, a tough patch. Chapman is more athletic. Fitzgerald is more athletic, but you're right. Like, there's no way around the fact that the Giants, they've given up a ton of steals and they have stolen fewer bases than any other team. Like, stolen bases isn't all what you're talking about, but it's a good sort of marker of the issues that you're speaking of. And they're a young, athletic, dynamic team right now, and that does get exposed against certain teams, not against all teams, but against certain teams it does.
Yeah, just putting pressure on the defense, first to third, second to home, just having that threat out there. Shasky, get here. Get your
the rules, the rules now encourage that. Rules would tell you that it's never been easier to put pressure on teams with one base. The first and third, one out or no, spread out the outs. First and third has never been harder to defend. And that we see other teams all the time. Like, it's actually, in a way, it's turned into a really exciting play. Because if you're watching a game, you're thinking, okay, when is that guy from first going to go? Mm-hmm. And is the team going to throw? And if they do throw, is the guy from third breaking for home? We saw the Giants do it one time, but not nearly as often as we're seeing other teams do it to them, exploit that situation.
So, Flem, there's just so much. There's so much going on here. Like the long-term situation that frustrates me is that, like, Luis Matos is a great example, and I understand, like, we don't want to give young players a 2-week period because that could jeopardize the playoffs and everything. But, like, he comes up. He clearly isn't going to be a pinch hit guy. Like, I don't even know if he's any good, but I just feel like a lot of the fans, myself included, at the forefront, it's like, wait a minute, you just acquired a guy from the Rangers none of us has ever heard of who's got 75 career at-bats, and you're going to elevate him to the big league team, and you're going to drop down Matos. Like, the transactions on this roster, I scratch my head. I scratch my head at times, and I'm exhausted. And I feel like as a business model, it's very difficult for us fans to get behind the way that they field a team on a daily basis. Is that something you hear from other fans when you're out on the road?
For sure. Yeah. I think this week in particular, this is no knock on Derek Hill or Mike Bauman, but it felt like we're back 4 years ago, like where, the we're just, you're picking up players who are floating around other rosters and, just trying to see if you can find a piece, like, as opposed to, I think the thing for me is, like, if you believe in your group and want your group to have chemistry and whatever it is that makes a team, it's hard to manage your team the way this roster is being managed right now. And I think that is a fair criticism. I do. Luis Matos cave, though. I mean, like, with Mike Baumann, like, no offense to Mike Baumann, but you got Spencer Bivens in the minor leagues who did a great job for you, who everybody likes, who won maybe the most important game of the whole year for you by pitching as good as he possibly could have pitched. Why is he not on this roster right now? That is a very fair question. And I don't know the answer to that question. He's pitching really well down in AAA. There's no good reason why he's not here right now. He should be. So I don't. That's kind of different. Matos is a harder one for me. Like, Matos, you have to ask yourself with Matos, in my opinion, which of Conforto or Yastrzemski are you just going to either let one go or trade one or just bench one and let him play? I don't believe it's good for Matos to be sitting around and not playing and being used as just a bench
totally
hitter.
Agree.
So that's a different one for me. Now, I make a very strong argument that just let him play.
Yes.
Just let him out there and play and give him regular playing time, and don't put the pressure of performance every day on him, and see what happens. Because to the big picture point of what you said about Matos, you said, I don't know if he's any good or not. I do think he's good. Like, Matos, to me, has a very rare ability. His bat to ball skill, and not just that, but his, like, Matos in a big spot. The reason why in some of those biggest moments of the year, earlier in the year, he came through, because that kid is not afraid of anything. Like, he has a rare ability to stand in there. He crowds the plate. It doesn't matter how hard. Guy could be throwing 102 and he's standing on top of the plate and he does not blink. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't blink. We've seen a track record of hitting in the minor leagues. I believe they have something in Matos that can turn into a very special big leaguer, but it is going to take time. And at some point, you're going to have to dedicate yourself to riding the wave of the ups and downs with him, and see if I'm right with that. See if he is, because I think he can be now. And I understand the other side of it. It's frustrating to watch him not play good outfield defense. He's got to get better at that, and he knows that. But obviously, the most impressive improvements we've seen this year have come from players who are getting a chance to improve at this level. And at some point, you're going to have to let Matos do that.
Flem, we're going to let you go in a second here. Dave Flemming join us on the River Islands guest line. I have to ask, though, Spadone and Lubman, I have to ask, if the Giants do end up becoming sellers, how disappointed will this ownership group be if they do have to turn into sellers, Flem?
Yeah, everybody would be disappointed. The group, the players don't want that to happen. The players want, but right now the Giants' chances of making the playoffs have been incredibly diminished. Like, this week has really hurt their chances of making the playoffs. So the one thing I would say is this, because the next time the three of us talk, it'll be past the deadline. Selling doesn't necessarily mean tank. Like, in this sport, selling, it means the last 2 months of the season can't be important, fruitful, productive, interesting. Like, if Mata comes back up here and plays today, and Fitzgerald gets a chance to show what he can do at shortstop, and Ramos keeps developing, and you get, maybe one more young pitcher up here, and you get to see Bird make a start every 5 days. It doesn't mean, if you sell off some pieces, that it's a tank job. So I think there's a way to kind of finesse this, where if they decide our chances of making the playoffs aren't great, here's how I would do it. I'll just answer it by saying this. If the Yankees and the Orioles both want a frontline starter, and you've got Big Snell sitting there, and you play them off one another, and you get one of their best prospects, a young guy you think, now that's a good long-term big leaguer, I would have a hard time not taking a chance on a trade like that. And so, I think that's kind of what you can do, as opposed to just, hey, we're selling to say the season's over. Right. And no, sell to say, hey, we got a chance to get a piece that we think can be a big part of this team. I know it's been a disappointing season so far, but we can make something out of it, salvage something out of it. That's the kind of deal I'd be to make.
All right, respect that, Flem. Have a good call tonight. Should be fun against the Rockies. Friday night special. Let's see if the Giants should get back on track. Thanks for the time today, Flem. We'll talk to you next week.
They have played a lot better at home, so who knows? Stranger things have happened. You win 4 games this weekend, and maybe you feel like the thing has changed. Yeah.
Then you got me saying, let's start next season with Robbie Ray, Blake Snell, Logan Webb, Birdsong, and Harrison. Because I was spitting that the other day, Flem, and then a couple losses later, I don't think I've been talking about that much.
But just think about that. Like, you say that out loud and you think, okay. Like, so that's what's been so weird about this season. There's been too much good and too many good performances to explain why this team is sitting where they are. It's been frustrating.
All right, Flem. We'll talk to you next week, man. Have a good call tonight.
Talk to you soon. Thanks.
All right, Dave Flemming here on the River Islands guest line. And the cold reality is that next time we talk, there could be some changes on this team. Can you beat Colorado? Can you get right against Colorado? You hope so. But what a disappointment. What a disappointment. Like, at least I see the Warriors are trying to do something. The Niners are in a position to contend for championships. Where are the Giants at?